There's a couple of things you need to do before you start adjusting the linear pull brake calipers and brake pads, and that is make sure that your rim is installed correctly and that it is centered in between the forks, and make sure that your rim is true and doesn't wobble back and forth when it rotates. First thing I'm going to do is adjust these brake pads, and the first thing I'm going to check is I'm going to sit or stand in front of the brake caliper arms. Grab them, hold them together against the rim, and make sure that they're pretty close to parallel with one another. As you can see, they are. If I needed to change the position of these caliper arms, where the brake pad bolts to the caliper arm, on each side of the caliper arm you have a concave and convex washer, and if you notice, they're varying thicknesses. Let me zoom in here. And you can reposition those washers so that you can change how far this pad, the distance between this pad here and this caliper arm, and that'll change the position of the caliper arms when you hold them together. Those convex and concave washers make it possible for you to reposition this pad into a number of different positions and then bolt it into that position. So it's important that one concave and one convex washer is on each side of this caliper arm, but you can reposition them to reposition the arms. Next thing I'm going to do is remove this brake cable noodle, and you do that by holding the brake caliper arms together and then just lifting up and out, lifting this noodle up and out where it attaches. And then behind each one of these brake caliper arms there's a spring, and I'm going to remove this spring, not remove it totally, but just unattach it here so that I have free play over this caliper arm, and I'm going to do that to each side. Next thing I'm going to do is take a 5mm Allen wrench and loosen up this brake pad so that I can reposition it or adjust it. I went ahead and took the brake caliper off, or brake pad off, because it's easier to talk about and explain the different adjustments with it off the not attached to the arm. The first thing I want to talk about is brake pad height, and that's how far the brake pad is up or down on the rim. With linear pull brake type systems, you want to adjust the brake pad to the highest point without overlapping the top of the rim and without interfering with the tire. And the reason that is because as this brake pad will wear, it will start to hit, it will drop, its contact point on the rim will drop. And it drops at about a 1-to-1 ratio, which means if I had a 1mm of wear on this brake pad would drop about 1mm compared to where it was originally, the height it was originally adjusted to. So that is our brake pad height, and we want it to be as close as possible to the top of the rim without overlapping it and without interfering with the tire. The next brake pad adjustment is called tangential alignment, and that is basically brake pad tilt when viewed from the side. So you want the brake pad to be aligned to the rim like this, where the distance from this end of the pad and the top of the rim is the same on this end as it is on this end. You don't want it to be tilted in any one direction. So having it adjusted and even like that is called tangential alignment. And the next brake pad alignment is called vertical face alignment, and that is where you want the face of the pad that makes contact with the rim to be flat against the rim, kind of like trying to view it through the viewfinder. It's upside down, but kind of like that. You don't want it to be tilted in any one direction. You want it to be flat against the rim, and that is called your vertical face alignment. The next pad alignment is called pad toe, and when they're talking about pad toe, they're usually talking about normal toe, brake pad toe, and that is when the front of the brake pad hits the rim first before the rear. And when I talk about front of brake pad, I'm referring to the part of the brake pad, which this would be the front, that points in the direction of rim rotation when the bike is moving forward. If this was my rim and I was viewing it from the top, if I had pad toe adjusted into my brake pad, the front of the pad would be hitting the rim first. And the distance you want the rear pad to add toe to the pad, the distance you want to adjust into the pad is about 0.25 millimeters to 1 millimeter. And there's several ways you can do it. A lot of people that do this all the time do it just by sight and feel. But for this video, I am going to be using these post-it papers to adjust toe into the pad, and 5 of these is close to about 0.5 millimeters. So I'm going to go with 0.5 millimeters. Let me see what else. So those are the 4 things. The reason I said that pad toe is optional is because one reason why you might not want to do it is because it increases brake pad wear. You could always leave it out, and then if your brakes are fine, they don't squeal or make any noise, then not worry about it. And if they do, you can just come back and you can add pad toe to the brake pads. Before I reattach the brake pad, I just want to show you the concave and convex washers. This is the concave washer, and you can see how it's sunken in there. And this is the convex washer, and they fit together like that, and that's what enables you to position the pad in a number of different positions and then tighten it down in that position. So there you go, concave and convex. Alright, so I've got my brake pad reattached and it's loose and I'm ready to actually align it. So I'm going to take my notepad and stick it to the rim here. And I'm going to turn the rim so that the pad is just underneath the rear of the brake pad. And I'm going to lift up the pad and adjust the vertical height. And I'm going to adjust this a little low because I know that it's going to hit the tire. So it's going to be a little lower than right at the top of the rim. I'm going to check my tangential alignment and check the vertical face alignment, and I know my toe's there. My toe alignment, maybe move this back a little bit. And then I'm going to tighten it up, and when you tighten these things, these pads want to move, so you want to hold the pad so that it doesn't turn and change the tangential alignment, and then just tighten it up, and then repeat the process on the other side. Alright, so now I'm ready to adjust the calipers and the cable length. So the first thing I'm going to do is reposition these caliper springs, and then I want to start fresh, so I'm going to loosen up this cable, loosen up this pinch bolt so that the cable can slide back and forth. And there are 2 ways to adjust cable length. One is at this pinch bolt. You can slide the cable back and forth, shortening and lengthening the cable. This is how you make big changes. Or there is an adjustment barrel up at the brake lever here where you can make smaller changes. And to start, I am going to move this adjustment or this lock nut all the way towards the adjustment barrel. Then turn the adjustment barrel in all the way and turn it out 2 turns. Was that 2 turns? Sweet. And that'll give me some play in either direction. Now the next step is I'm going to reassemble the brake cable noodle into the caliper arm. I don't want to pull this end off of the cable, so trying to be careful. And then I'm going to squeeze the caliper arms together till they're touching the rim, and then lightly pull on the cable. Then I'm going to release just a little bit just to add some distance between the brake pads and the rim, and then tighten up this pinch bolt. Alright, so next I'm going to grab the brake lever and squeeze it about 10 times. And that's just to settle everything and to make sure that this pinch bolt is tight. And then I can manually move these caliper arms back and forth. And I'm going to do that, and then I'm going to rotate the tire. And I just want to make sure that there's enough gap between the brake pads and the rim, that the brake pads are not rubbing against the rim. And if they are, I can just loosen up this pinch bolt and let the cable out. But this one is fine. Now I'm ready to adjust these calipers so that the rim and tire are centered evenly in between these two calipers. And the way that that is done is both caliper arms are under spring tension, and you can control the amount of spring tension using the screw here for this caliper. And then this caliper has this screw, and by turning these screws, this screw in, it increases the spring tension on that caliper and wants to pull it out, and turning it out releases that spring tension. And by playing with these two screws, you can center move the calipers back and forth to center the tire and rim. There's a couple of ways of doing it. One is look at your brake pads and look at the gap between the pad and the tire and make it so that the gap is even on both brake pads, but that's kind of hard with the tire on. So the method I am going to use is when you pull on the brake lever and these calipers begin to move, if you can adjust it so that the calipers begin to move at the same time, at the same rate, and stop at the same time. When you've done that, then you know that the tire and rim are centered in between the two calipers. So we're going to use that method and just visually watch the calipers move back and forth to center everything correctly. So as I pull on the brake lever, you can see that this caliper is starting to move before this one, and it's moving much farther. And the reason that is happening is the spring tension on this caliper is higher than the spring tension on this one, and it's actually pulling it in this direction. And the way that you solve that problem is I'm going to take the screw for this caliper spring tension and release it. And I'm going to do it in small increments of half a turn. And then recheck it and see if there's an improvement. And it looks like there is, so I'm going to go another half a turn. And another half a turn. You can even use quarter turns. Here's one more time. And that's pretty good. They're both starting at the same time. They move about the same rate, stop at the same time. So you've got the tire and the rim centered pretty well in between the calipers. And then just rotate it and check for any rubbing. When you're adjusting the spring tension on these caliper arms, a good rule of thumb is only adjust these screws in small increments of usually a half a turn, but you can go as low as a quarter of a turn. And then after you make an adjustment, pull the brake lever and analyze what just happened. And by using small increments and analyzing the result, you can move in a direction that will position these arms so that the tire and rim will be centered for you. The last thing we need to do is set the amount of gap between the brake pad and the rim. And there's basically two methods, ways of doing that, and the more precise method is to use a feeler gauge and set the gap to about 1.5 millimeters. And I've never seen a feeler gauge with one gauge that is 1.5 millimeters, but if you combine two of them, like here I have a .737 and a .6762, if you combine these it's about 1.5 millimeter, and you can use that to set the gap between the pad and the rim. And remember that we added toe to these pads, so you're going to want to check the gap at the front of the brake pad and not at the rear. If you need to make a change, you do it here at the pinch bolt for large changes, or you can do it here at the lever using the adjustment barrel. But if you have to turn the adjustment barrel more than 2 turns in either direction, then you're going to want to set the adjustment barrel back in its original position and go down to the pinch bolt and make the change there. The other method used to set gap between the brake pad and rim is to set the just adjust it so that the lever is whatever the rider preference is. Usually it's when you compress, just start to feel resistance on the lever, you'll have about 1 inch to 1.5 inches distance between the lever and the grip. And this feels fine to me, so I'm going to leave it right here. I'm not going to make any adjustments, but if I had to make an adjustment I would do it the same way as for the more precise method, and that's by adjusting it at the pinch bolt or adjusting it here at the barrel. And then the last thing we need to do is just make sure that your lock nut on this adjustment barrel is turned all the way towards the lever and tight. One thing to keep in mind with these cheaper Walmart big box store type bicycles is these bicycles are not going to be precision made machines like you would find with a a $4,000 or more mountain bike. So just keep that in mind, that you're going to run into imperfections when you're doing these adjustments. And also everything that I talked about on the front brake can be applied to the rear brake. So yeah, if you have any questions, just leave them in the comments section, and thanks for watching.